I always thought my mother was afraid of the world. She never traveled. She never raised her voice. I spent years wishing she was stronger. But today I opened a box she kept locked for 3 decades. And I realized she wasn't hiding from the world. She was hiding me from it. And if you've ever misunderstood your parents, if you've ever rolled your eyes at the quiet things they did, then you need to hear what I found. Because before the week is over, I have to know who my mother really was. The day after the funeral, our house sounded wrong. No kettle whistling, no soft radio static from the kitchen, no little shuffle of slippers across linoleum. Just the refrigerator's low hum and the rain tapping the windows like a nervous finger. The air smelled like lilies and old carpet, funeral flowers dying slowly in their vases. Every room looked the same. But it felt like the house had pulled its breath in and refused to let it out. I stood in the hallway and stared at the framed photo we'd kept there for years. Me at 8, missing my front tooth, holding a blue ribbon. My mom behind me, hands on my shoulders, smiling like she'd just borrowed the expression. Claire Bennett, my mother, fragile. That's what people would say if they said anything at all. She was sweet, my coworkers offered. She was quiet. She was a good mom. Like her whole life fit on a sympathy card, and the awful truth was I'd agreed with them. I'd been the one who moved out at 18, got scholarships, climbed ladders, learned to speak loud in conference rooms. I'd built a life made of motion, and when I looked back at her, I only saw stillness. My phone buzzed again. A work email. Another buzz, a text. Brooke, you okay? Need me to call the realtor? Houses like that sell fast, don't sit on it. Brooke was my temptation in a blazer. The part of me that always knew the next step, the next goal, the next upgrade. The voice that said, clean it out, close it up, move on. I typed not yet, then deleted it. I set my phone face down on the console table like I was putting a lid on a pot about to boil over. The floor creaked behind me. Sweetheart, you haven't eaten. That voice, warm, bossy, impossible to ignore, belonged to Nora Caldwell, our next-door neighbor and my mother's best friend since before I was born. She was shaped like comfort, round cheeks, bright scarf, a cardigan that always smelled like cinnamon and fabric softener. She stepped inside carrying a foil-covered casserole dish like it was a sacred offering. Nora, you didn't have to. Yes, I did, she said, marching straight into the kitchen. Because your mom would haunt me if I let you starve in this sad little house. The word haunt landed heavier than she meant it to. She peeled back the foil. Steam rolled up, thick with cheese and garlic. My stomach tightened like it was angry at me for forgetting it existed. Nora set the dish down, then turned and looked at me, not at my face, at my posture. You're holding yourself like you're bracing for impact, she said softly. I tried to laugh, it came out thin. I'm fine. Nora's eyebrows lifted. Mom, and I'm Taylor Swift. She reached for my hands, squeezed them, and her palms were warm, real warmth, not the kind you imagine. You can be strong and still be broken, she said. Your mom taught you that, even if you didn't notice. I swallowed. I hated how quickly tears came when someone spoke about mom like she was still present. I noticed plenty, I whispered. I noticed she never did anything. She stayed here, she worried about everything. She lived like the world was a storm coming. Nora went still just for a second, then she said, eat first. Talk later. But the way she avoided my eyes, that was the first crack, and my mind caught on it like a fingernail on fabric. By mid-afternoon, the rain eased into a mist. The house grew quiet again after Nora left, except for the occasional drip from the gutter outside. I moved through rooms like a careful thief. The living room smelled like furniture polish and the faint ghost of Mom's lavender lotion. On the armchair, her knitting basket still sat open. A half-finished baby blanket, pale yellow. She'd been making it for someone, not me. The kitchen drawer still held rubber bands, coupons, and that tiny notebook where she wrote grocery lists in neat, tilted letters. Milk, eggs, rice, Emma's favorite cereal, Band-Aids, like she was always preparing for a scrape she couldn't predict. That's who I thought she was, a woman who made life smaller so it could be managed. Then I opened her jewelry box. It was old, scratched wood, the kind with a little mirror inside that made you look slightly warped. It smelled like metal and perfume that had faded into something powdery. Inside, costume earrings, a thin wedding band, a bracelet with a missing charm. Normal, disappointingly normal, until I noticed the bottom didn't sit flush. I pressed down and the false base shifted with a soft click. My pulse jumped. Underneath was a small brass key taped to a folded note. The note was in my mother's handwriting, 3 words. Not for Emma. My throat went tight. Not for me. I stared at the key like it was blinking, like it was alive. I turned it over in my fingers, cold, heavy for its size, the kind of key that belonged to an old lock, something not meant to be opened casually. My brain tried to do what it always did, explain it away. Probably a safe deposit box, probably old documents, probably nothing, but my mother didn't do probably nothing. She did careful, she did intentional. She did quiet things that mattered. And she'd hidden this under a false bottom with a note that said it wasn't for me, which meant it was for someone, or for something. My phone buzzed again. I didn't look. I walked to the basement door. That door had always freaked me out. Not because it was haunted, because Mom treated it like it was. As a kid, if I even reached for the knob, she'd appear behind me like a shadow. Emma, no, she'd say, gentle but final. Basement's not safe. Not safe from what? Mold, spiders, the dark. Now I wrapped my fingers around the knob. The metal was cold enough to sting. I slid the brass key into the lock and it fit. My skin prickled. The lock turned with a reluctant clunk like it hadn't been used in years. From below came a sound I couldn't place. Not a voice, not an animal, just a low, steady mechanical hum like something had been left running long after it should have stopped. I froze, hand still on the knob, and for the first time since the funeral I felt it clearly. This wasn't about grief. This was about history. Whatever my mother was, it was behind this door. I whispered the only promise that made sense. Before the week is over, I have to know who my mother really was. And then I pulled the basement door open, just enough for the darkness to breathe out at me. And something metallic like old pennies and cold air hit the back of my throat. At the bottom of the stairs, a thin line of light flickered. Like a monitor, like a warning. I took one step down, and behind me my phone buzzed again. This time the screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in years. Unknown number, and beneath it one line of text, "Stop digging, Emma." My blood turned to ice. The text sat on my screen like it had weight. "Stop digging, Emma." No number, no contact photo, just that sentence, clean and confident, like whoever sent it knew I'd read it alone in this house. The basement door creaked in my grip. The air coming up from below smelled metallic and damp, like pennies left in a wet coat pocket. It carried another scent too, hot dust, like an old machine had been running for years without anyone opening a window. My heart thumped so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I should have backed away. I should have called the police. I should have called Nora. Instead, I whispered, "Okay, Mom, what is this?" And I went down. The stairs were narrow. The handrail was cold and slightly sticky, varnish worn thin by decades. Each step complained under my weight, long, wounded creaks that sounded too loud for a house that wanted to keep secrets. At the bottom, the basement wasn't the dark cave I remembered. A thin line of light pulsed from the far corner. A green, blinking LED, a dehumidifier, that was the hum. But it wasn't just humming, it was new. Cleaner than anything else in the basement. Like someone had replaced it recently. Like someone had been down here after my mother. My mouth went dry. I turned slowly, letting my eyes adjust. The concrete walls were stained and sweating. Shelves lined one side, old paint cans, jars of nails, a box labeled Christmas in my mom's careful handwriting. And then I saw it. A door, not the basement door, the one I came through. A smaller interior door at the back, painted the same dull gray as the wall so it hid in plain sight. The doorknob was shinier than it should have been. My fingers tightened around the brass key. The key wasn't for the basement, it was for that. Behind me, the house popped softly, a settling sound like it didn't want me to hear myself breathing. I stepped toward the door. My shoes scuffed on the concrete and the sound felt wrong, too crisp. A chill crept under my sweater. The air was colder near the back wall and it smelled faintly like old paper and cedar. I slid the key in. It turned like it had been waiting. The latch clicked. I opened the door. Inside was a storage room, small, tight, lined with wooden shelves. No cobwebs, no mess, everything organized. Too organized. There were bankers' boxes stacked neatly, each one labeled in black marker. Tax 1989-1995 medical home Emma. My lungs forgot how to work. There was a box with my name on it. I reached for it with both hands. The cardboard was cool, dry. My fingers shook as I lifted the lid. Inside, a manila envelope, a baby bracelet, a folded hospital discharge paper, and on top, a spiral-bound notebook. A ledger, not the cute kind with floral designs. This one was plain, industrial, like it belonged on a desk with a security badge beside it. I flipped it open. The handwriting was my mother's, but the content wasn't grocery lists. It was columns, dates, times, names, locations, amounts. And in the margin, codes, short, sharp notes, contact confirmed, threat level elevated, no approach, watch only, Emma school pickup rerouted. My stomach dropped like an elevator cable snapped. This wasn't a budget. This was surveillance. I forced myself to read the first page. My brain tried to make it make sense, the way it always did when reality didn't fit the story I'd been living. Maybe she volunteered, maybe she helped police. Maybe it was some neighborhood watch thing, but the names weren't neighbors. They were unfamiliar, repeated, written with the kind of precision you don't use unless the stakes are real. Then I saw one line that made the basement tilt. 3/14 B. Caldwell delivered. Caldwell, Nora Caldwell. My hands went numb. Nora had been here not just as a sweet neighbor with casseroles. She was in the ledger. I turned pages faster, paper rasping under my fingers. The sound was loud in the small room, like a flag snapping in wind. More entries. Emma phone line checked. Emma camp registration verified. Emma Brooke L workplace background clean. Brooke, my friend, my coworker. My temptation voice that wanted me to sell the house and shut the book. My throat tightened until swallowing hurt. What did that mean? It meant my mother had been watching everyone around me. Or someone had been watching me and she'd been fighting it. I heard a noise upstairs, a soft thud, like a footstep. Every muscle in my body locked. The basement light flickered once and the dehumidifier's hum suddenly sounded like a countdown. I stayed perfectly still. Another sound closer, a faint creak in the hallway above. Someone was in the house. My brain screamed, run, but my legs didn't move. I reached for my phone in my pocket with slow, trembling fingers. No service. Of course, my mother's house, old basement, thick walls, or something else. I shut the ledger quietly, like closing a mouth. In the corner of the storage room was something I hadn't noticed at first, a cedar chest, the kind you store blankets in. It had a fresh padlock. My brass key didn't fit that lock, but the chest wasn't the thing that made my skin crawl. It was the strip of painter's tape on the lid, written in my mother's handwriting. "If I'm gone, do not open this alone." My eyes burned. "Mom," I whispered, and the word came out cracked. Upstairs, a floorboard groaned. My pulse hammered so loudly I thought it would give me away. I backed out of the storage room and eased the door shut. The key stayed in my fist like a weapon I didn't know how to use. I crept to the bottom step and listened. Silence. Then, faintly, another sound. The soft, polite click of the front door closing. Not slamming, not rushing, closing like someone who belonged here, like someone who knew exactly how much noise was too much. I forced myself up 2 steps, then 3, keeping my weight on the edges the way I used to when sneaking snacks at night. At the top, I paused. The basement door was still open a crack. A thin blade of light cut into the hallway. I pushed it wider, inch by inch. The air upstairs felt warmer, but it smelled wrong now, like cold cologne and wet wool, like a stranger had walked through and left a shadow behind. I stepped into the hallway. The living room looked untouched. The kitchen too, but my phone was no longer face down on the console table. It was upright, propped carefully against the wall, and on the screen, bright, smug, waiting, was a new message from the same unknown number. Not words this time. A photo. A photo of me in the basement doorway, taken from inside the house. Taken just minutes ago. Under it, one line, "You opened the wrong box, Emma." My knees went weak. My mother wasn't just hiding something, she was guarding something. And now, someone else knew I'd found the first thread. I stared at the photo until my vision blurred and the promise in my chest turned into a vow. Before the week is over, I have to know who my mother really was. Because whoever she used to be, they were coming back. And I had a feeling the first person who could explain it was Nora Caldwell. But Nora had avoided my eyes yesterday, and now I knew why. I grabbed my coat, the ledger tucked under my arm like a stolen secret. As I reached for the front door, my phone buzzed again. A call this time. The caller ID didn't say unknown number, it said NORAC. I froze, hand on the knob. And when I answered, Nora's voice wasn't warm, it was low, urgent, almost angry. "Emma," she said, "listen to me, don't go back down there." A pause, a breath. "They know you're in the house." And then before I could speak, she added, "And sweetheart, your mother wasn't a housewife." The line went dead. Nora's call left a silence in my ear that felt physical, like cotton stuffed into a wound. "Emma," she'd said, "don't go back down there, they know you're in the house." Then click, no explanation, no "are you okay?" No warm neighbor voice. Just a warning, like a command. I stood by the front door with my coat half on, the ledger tucked under my arm. The house smelled like wet wood and lilies turning sour. I stared at the dead screen of my phone. My fingers were shaking so badly I dropped the brass key into my pocket and it clinked against coins like an accusation. Outside, the street looked normal. Gray skies, damp pavement. A trash can tipped near the curb. The kind of quiet neighborhood where nothing ever happened, which made it worse, Because someone had been inside my house. Someone had taken a photo of me. Someone had left like they owned the place. I should have called the police. But what would I say? Hi, yes, I found my dead mother's spy ledger and now an unknown number is stalking me. No, I did the thing I always did when I was scared. I reached for the person who made decisions fast. I called Brooke. She answered on the second ring, voice bright, crisp, like she was smiling at her calendar. Finally, I was about to drive over. You okay? I know, I swallowed. My mouth tasted like pennies. Someone was in the house. A pause. Someone broke in? I don't know, they didn't take anything. My eyes flicked to the hallway. They left a message. Brooke didn't ask what the message said. She said, "Okay, listen to me. You need to stop being alone in there. Pack a bag. Come stay with me tonight." Her tone was clean, efficient, comfort wrapped in control. I pictured her apartment, white countertops, candles that smelled like expensive vanilla, a lock that beeped like a bank vault. Safety. And yet, the ledger under my arm felt heavier. "My mom," I started. Brooke cut in gently. "Emma, I know you're spiraling. Grief does weird things. You've been through a lot." Grief does weird things, like I'd imagined the photo. Like I'd imagined the codes in my mother's handwriting. "I'm not imagining this," I said, sharper than I meant to. Brooke exhaled like she was trying to be patient. "Okay, then let me help you do the rational thing. Call the police. File a report, and tomorrow we start clearing the house. Don't dig through old boxes looking for, what, a spy thriller?" The word dig hit like a slap. My skin went cold. "How did you know I was digging?" I asked. Silence. Then Brooke laughed, small, controlled. "Because you're you, you can't leave anything alone." A simple answer, a believable answer, but my stomach didn't believe it. I looked down at the ledger again. One line flashed in my mind. Emma Brooke L. Workplace background clean. Background clean, my mother had checked her. "Why, Emma?" Brooke's voice sharpened. "Are you listening? You sound weird." "I'm fine," I lied. I'll call you back." "Emma, don't hang up." I ended the call. My hands were sweating. Brooke wasn't the villain in a black coat. She was the villain in a soft voice telling me to stop asking questions. The old identity villain. The one who wanted me to keep my life tidy. Close the house. Close the chapter. Close the door. But I couldn't. Before the week is over, I have to know who my mother really was. I didn't drive to Brooke's. I crossed the street. Nora's house had always felt like warmth, wind chimes, porch plants, that faint smell of cinnamon that seeped through the walls like kindness. Today, it looked like a different house. The curtains were drawn tight, and the porch light was on at 3 in the afternoon. I knocked once. Nothing. I knocked again, harder, still nothing. I stepped back and noticed the tiniest detail. The door wasn't fully latched. It sat a fraction open, like someone had closed it in a hurry. "Nora," I called, keeping my voice low. A muffled sound came from inside. Not words. A whimper. My blood snapped into motion. I pushed the door open. "Nora," the air inside smelled sharp, medicinal, like rubbing alcohol and burnt toast. The living room was dim. A TV played quietly with the sound almost off. Then I saw her. Nora was on the floor near the couch, one hand clawed around the edge of the coffee table like she'd tried to pull herself up. Her face was pale and wet with sweat. Her scarf was gone. Her cardigan hung open. And beside her, tipped on its side, was a small oxygen tank. "Nora," I dropped to my knees. "Oh my God, can you breathe?" Her eyes fluttered, focusing with effort. "Emma," she rasped. "Door should have locked. Don't talk," I said fast, pulling the oxygen mask up with trembling hands. The rubber strap was twisted. I fumbled with it like my fingers belonged to someone else. Okay, 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 the mask slipped. Nora's chest hitched. Panic flooded my throat. I forced myself to do what my mother always did in emergencies: get practical. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. No signal, of course. I stumbled upright, sprinted to the window, pressed the phone to the glass like that would change physics. One bar, I hit call. It rang once, then dropped. Nora, I said, rushing back. I'm calling. She grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. Her grip was hot. No police, she wheezed. What? I leaned closer. Nora, you're on the floor? No police, she repeated, eyes wide now, urgent in a way that made my stomach twist. Not this. My mind stuttered. A caregiving moment with a rule attached. A crisis with conditions. It felt like being handed a fire extinguisher and told you could only use it if you didn't make smoke. Nora, I need help, I whispered. Her gaze flicked toward the hallway like she was afraid of the walls. Back room, she said. Cabinet, second shelf, red pouch. Okay. I scrambled up, nearly tripping over the tipped oxygen tank. The metal clanged and my heart leapt. I ran down the hall, every shadow suddenly suspicious. The back room was a cramped den that smelled like cedar and lemon cleaner. A filing cabinet sat beside an old desk. On the wall, a framed photo of Nora and my mother, Claire, standing shoulder to shoulder, both in winter coats, both looking straight at the camera with the same guarded expression. My mother looked different, not fragile. Alert. I yanked open the cabinet. Files, envelopes, a small metal box, second shelf, red pouch. I grabbed it and rushed back. Inside was a blood pressure cuff and a pill organizer and, shockingly, a slim black device the size of a TV remote with a single button and a tiny antenna. Not a medical device, something else. Nora saw it in my hand and her eyes sharpened despite the sweat. Not that, she breathed. The pills. My fingers shook so hard I almost spilled them. I popped open the organizer, found the slot marked Moan AM, even though it wasn't Monday, and held it out like an offering. Nora swallowed with difficulty. Her breathing eased slightly. She closed her eyes like she was forcing her body back under control. I sat beside her on the floor, my knees wet from the damp carpet, my hair sticking to my face. The house was too quiet except for the oxygen's faint hiss. That device, I said softly, nodding toward the red pouch. What is it? Nora's eyes opened. And the warmth I knew wasn't there. She looked at me like she was measuring whether I could handle the truth. Then she said very carefully, your mother told me if you ever found anything I was supposed to stop you. My chest tightened. Stop me from what? Nora's jaw worked. She seemed to taste each word before she let it out. From waking them up, she whispered. A chill ran down my spine. Them? I asked. Nora didn't answer. Instead, she pushed herself up onto the couch, still shaky. She kept one hand near the oxygen tank like it was a lifeline. Give me the ledger, she said. My grip tightened on it instinctively. No, Nora's eyes flashed. Emma, you don't understand what you're holding. Then explain it, I snapped, tears rising hot and angry. Explain why my mother wrote surveillance notes about my life. Explain why someone texted me a photo from inside my house. Nora's gaze darted to the front window. Then, so fast I barely processed it, she reached under the couch cushion and pulled out a phone I'd never seen before. A burner phone. She tapped the screen with shaking fingers, and my phone on the carpet beside me buzzed. A new text, same unknown number. Only this time it wasn't threatening. It was just one sentence that made my stomach drop through the floor. Tell Emma I'm coming for what her mother stole. I stared at Nora. Nora stared back. And in her eyes I saw it, not confusion, not surprise, recognition. Nora whispered, "Oh no," then louder, commanding now, like she'd stepped into a different skin. "Emma, get your coat, right now." My throat went tight. "Why?" Nora's voice trembled, but she didn't soften it. "Because the person who sent that," she said, "is the reason your mother became a housewife." A beat. And then the front door handle turned, slow, deliberate. Like whoever was outside had all the time in the world. Nora grabbed my arm. "Do not look through the peephole," she hissed. "Do not open the door." My heart slammed against my ribs. The knob stopped turning. A knock came instead, 3 taps. Polite, and then through the wood someone spoke in a calm, familiar voice that didn't belong on my porch. "Emma," the voice said, smooth as a smile. "It's Brooke. Before the week is over, I have to know who my mother really was." Because suddenly, my safest person was standing on the other side of the door. "Before the week is over, I have to know who my mother really was." Brooke's voice slid through the door like perfume. "Emma," she said again, gentle, "it's me, open up." Nora's fingers dug into my forearm hard enough to hurt. Her eyes were wide, not with panic, with calculation, like she was running through old training. "Back door," she mouthed. I shook my head, barely breathing. The living room smelled like Nora's cinnamon candles and the sharp tang of her oxygen. My palms were slick. The ledger was pressed to my ribs like a second heartbeat. Another knock, 3 taps. Polite, patient. "Emma," Brooke called, "I brought you soup. I'm not leaving until I know you're okay." Soup, like a normal friend. Like a concerned coworker. Not like someone who texted me a photo from inside my house. Nora leaned close, her lips almost touching my ear. "If you open that door, you won't get to close it again." My throat tightened. "How do you know it's not just?" Nora shook her head once, sharp. "Because your mother warned me about this exact play." The word play made it worse, like my life was a script someone else had been rehearsing. Brooke's voice softened, turning warm. I know you're upset, you're grieving. I'm not mad, I just want to help." Nora's jaw clenched like the sound physically hurt her. "Go," she whispered. I moved. We didn't run. Nora didn't let me run. She grabbed my wrist and guided me down the hall, past the den, past the cabinet I'd raided, toward the back of the house where the kitchen window glowed gray with daylight. Every step felt too loud. Outside, the world looked ordinary. A neighbor's dog barked once. Wind pushed wet leaves across the patio. Somewhere, a lawn sprinkler clicked on like nothing in the universe had changed. But the doorknob at the front of the house clicked again, this time not turning, testing. Like someone was checking if we'd moved. Nora eased the back door open an inch, peered out, then pulled me into the cold, damp air. Her backyard fence was tall, privacy panels. The wood smelled wet and sour. Wind chimes clinked faintly near her porch, a sound that suddenly felt like a timer. We crouched behind a row of hydrangeas, dead blooms sagging under rain. Nora's breathing was rough, and I realized with horror she was pushing herself too hard, still recovering, still pale. "Where are we going?" I whispered. "Your mother's storage," Nora breathed. "Across town, she left something there, something that will make this make sense." My brain snagged. "Storage, my mom didn't." Nora gave me a look that shut my mouth. "Emma," she said, low and fierce, "your mother had more lives than you ever knew." A car door shut somewhere nearby. I froze. Nora tightened her grip and pulled me along the fence line, moving with surprising speed for someone who'd been on the floor minutes ago. We cut through a narrow gap between fences into the alley behind the houses. Trash bins lined the gravel, The air smelled like damp cardboard and motor oil. Nora pointed. Her old sedan sat parked 2 houses down, partially hidden behind a maple tree. We moved fast, ducking low. As we approached, I saw the driver's side door handle had a strip of clear tape over it. A tiny trick to show tampering. Nora saw my eyes land on it and nodded grimly. Your mother taught me that. My stomach dropped again. Nora peeled the tape away, unlocked the door, and shoved me into the passenger seat. The car smelled like peppermint gum and old leather. Nora slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and the radio sprang to life automatically, static and a country song mid-chorus. She snapped it off. Seat belt, she ordered, voice tight. I obeyed. We pulled away just as I caught a glimpse in the side mirror Brooke on Nora's porch, standing still, not knocking anymore, just watching the house. Like she knew we weren't inside. My chest went hollow. Nora drove like she had somewhere to be before a door slammed shut forever. Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Rain smeared the windshield into gray streaks. I clutched the ledger on my lap. The paper edges bit into my palms. Nora, I said, what is happening? Nora's jaw flexed. Your mother's old life is happening. What old life? My voice cracked. She baked casseroles and labeled Christmas boxes. Nora shot me a glance so sharp it stung. That was her disguise. My breath hitched. Disguise from who? Nora didn't answer immediately. She turned onto a busier road. Tires hissed on wet asphalt. A siren wailed somewhere distant and faded. Finally, she said, from family? That single word landed heavy. I pictured my mother's family, a few distant cousins, an uncle I'd met once. No drama. No monsters. But then I remembered something I'd buried. The way my mother would go tense if anyone asked about her maiden name. The way she'd change the subject like she'd burned her tongue. Nora pulled into a self-storage facility with a bright orange sign and too many security cameras. The gates beeped as she punched in a code. Not a code she looked up. A code she knew. We parked near a row of metal doors. The air smelled like wet concrete and hot rubber. Nora stepped out, bracing herself on the car for a half-second. Then she straightened like she refused to be weak. Unit 117, she said. How do you? Because I helped her pay for it, Nora snapped, then softened just a hair. Because she didn't trust banks, because she didn't trust anything that could be accessed without her permission. She walked to the unit. The padlock was clean, newish. Nora pulled a key ring from her pocket, different from mine, and unlocked it. The door rolled up with a metallic rattle that echoed down the corridor. Inside, the unit was packed, not with furniture, with boxes. Files, a garment bag, a locked briefcase. And on top of one box, right in the center like an offering, a framed photo. My mother, Claire, standing in front of a government-looking building. Hair pinned back, eyes sharp, wearing a fitted suit. A badge clipped at her waist. She looked powerful, not fragile, not quiet, like someone who could walk into a room and make it obey. My throat went tight around a sound that wanted to be a sob. That's, I whispered. That's not her, Nora's voice broke slightly. It is. I stepped closer, fingers hovering over the glass. The photo smelled faintly like dust and old ink. Behind my mother stood another woman, shorter, blonde, smiling. And even through the years, even through the different lighting, even through the sharpness of that old photograph, I recognized her. Brooke, not older Brooke, younger Brooke, same dimples, same chin. Same eyes that looked kind until you noticed they didn't soften. My stomach rolled hard. That's impossible, I said, voice thin. Brooke is 32. Nora's face was gray. That's her mother. My skin prickled. Brooke's mom. Brooke had told me her mom died when she was young. Car crash. Tragic, end of story. But the woman in the photo was alive in that moment, standing right beside my mother like they were partners or enemies. Nora reached into a box and pulled out a file folder. She handed it to me with both hands as if it weighed more than paper. On the tab, BENNETTCLAIRE, closed. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper on official letterhead and a smaller photograph clipped to the corner. The letter had a title that made my vision blur: Witness Protection Program, a placement summary. I read it once. Twice. My brain refusing to let it become real. My mother hadn't been unambitious. She'd been hidden. I stared at the small photograph clipped to the letter. It was a candid shot, grainy, taken from far away. My mother walking through a parking lot, face turned slightly, and across the lot, partially obscured by a car door, a man watched her. Even in the blur, his posture screamed danger. Controlled. Patient. Under the photo, a typed name. Grant Hawthorne. My mouth went numb. Nora's voice came out like sandpaper. That's the family danger she ran from. I swallowed. Who is he? Nora looked at me, eyes wet and furious at the same time. He was her brother-in-law. My stomach dropped. Nora continued, each word a nail. And he wasn't after her, he was after you. The world narrowed to the sound of rain pinging against the metal storage door. My voice came out tiny. Why? Nora hesitated just long enough to make me feel the cliff edge. Then she said it. Because you weren't supposed to exist. A cold wave swept through me. I grabbed the edge of a box to keep from falling. Nora reached into the garment bag and unzipped it. Inside hung a uniform, dark, official, with patches on the sleeve and a name tag on the chest. CBENNETT. My mother had been a protector, a professional, someone with authority. Someone who gave it all up. Nora whispered, Claire didn't stay home because she was scared. She stepped closer, eyes locked on mine. She stayed home because leaving you unguarded for even one day, Nora's throat bobbed, could have gotten you taken? A phone buzzed, not mine, not Nora's, from inside the storage unit. A sound that didn't belong. We both froze. The buzzing came again, buried under boxes deep in the unit, like something had been waiting to wake up. Nora's face drained of color. No, she whispered, then louder, urgent, Emma, back up. I didn't move fast enough because the buzzing turned into a ringtone, and the ringtone was a tune I knew. The lullaby my mother used to hum while washing dishes. My blood turned to ice. Nora yanked a box aside, revealing a small phone wrapped in plastic, hidden, preserved. It vibrated like a trapped insect. Nora didn't want to answer. But her hands did it anyway. She pressed speaker. A man's voice filled the unit, calm, amused, terrifyingly familiar. Hello, Nora, he said, a pause, a smile in his tone. Tell Emma I'd like my ledger back. Before the week is over, I have to know who my mother really was, because now I knew her name, and now the man from the photo knew mine. The man's voice came through the speaker like it belonged in the room. Hello, Nora, he said again, patient, amused. Tell Emma I'd like my ledger back. The rain outside ticked against the metal door in a steady, relentless rhythm. The storage unit smelled like damp cardboard and cedar, and my mouth tasted like panic, bitter and metallic. Nora didn't look at me. She stared at the phone like it was a snake. You shouldn't be calling this line, Nora rasped. A soft chuckle. I didn't call you Nora, I called Claire. A pause. Old habits. My stomach tightened at the sound of my mother's first name in his mouth. Nora's fingers hovered over the phone, her hand shook. Then she did something that shocked me. She handed the phone to me. "Emma," she whispered, "your mother wrote rules for this moment." My throat went dry. "Rules?" Nora's eyes were glossy. "You don't beg, you don't bargain. You listen for the trap." My hands closed around the phone. It was cold through the plastic, vibrating like it had a heartbeat. I raised it. "Who are you?" Silence, just long enough to feel like he was smiling. "Grant Hawthorne," he said. "Your family?" The word family hit like a dirty hand on my shoulder. I heard Brooke's voice in my head. "You're spiraling. Grief does weird things." I saw her standing on Nora's porch, not knocking, just watching. "You sent the messages," I said, another chuckle. "Messages? Oh, sweetheart, those were warnings." He sighed like I'd disappointed him. "Claire did a good job training you to be curious. She always had that stubborn streak." My eyes burned. "What did she steal?" I demanded. Grant's voice sharpened just a blade's width. "What she stole is none of your concern. What you have is a beat." "The ledger," Nora mouthed. "Don't say you have it." I swallowed. "I don't know what you're talking about." Grant laughed softly. "Emma, I watched your mother raise you." His voice lowered, intimate, poisonous. "I watched you graduate. I watched you move into your first apartment. I watched you become impressive." My skin crawled. "You're lying," I said, but the words tasted weak. He didn't argue. He didn't need to. Instead, he said, "Here's the deal. You bring the ledger to your mother's house tonight, 8 p.m. You leave it in the kitchen, you walk away." Nora's eyes widened, silently screaming no. "If you do," Grant continued, "this ends. You can go back to believing your mother was fragile. You can sell the house. You can live your lovely, tidy life." His tone changed, silk turning to wire. "If you don't, we start removing things you love until you understand." My breath hitched. "Like what?" A pause, then. "Like Nora." Nora flinched like he'd slapped her through the speaker. Grant's voice stayed calm. "She's already been reminded that bodies have limits." My nails dug into my palm. "Leave her out of this," I snapped. Grant sighed. "Then give me what belongs to me." The call ended, not a click, more like a door shutting gently. I stared at the phone in my hand, my whole body buzzing. Nora grabbed my shoulders. "Emma, look at me." I forced my eyes up. Nora's voice steadied. "Your mother designed this, the whole thing, the hiding, the boxes, the warnings. She knew one day you might be forced to choose." "Choose what?" I whispered. Nora's expression broke, and for the first time, she looked older than I'd ever seen her. "Whether you stay the child she protected, or you become the woman who finishes it." My chest ached so hard it felt bruised. I looked at the file again, Witness Protection Program. My mother's uniform, the photo with Brooke's mother. "Brooke," I breathed. "Brooke is connected." Nora nodded once, grim. "Brooke's mother was the liaison who placed your mother. She didn't die in a car crash." Nora's mouth tightened. "She disappeared." My blood went cold. "Because of my mom, because of Grant," Nora corrected. "Claire took something that could bury him, she hid it, and she hid you." Those were the two anchors. Anchor. That word hit different now. My mother wasn't drifting through life. She'd been holding the entire ocean back with her hands. Before the week is over, I have to know who my mother really was, and now I did. But knowing wasn't enough, not if Grant could still reach us. I looked down at the ledger under my arm. "He wants this." Nora swallowed. "Yes." "What if we give it to him?" I asked, hating myself for even saying it. Nora's eyes flashed. "Then your mother died for nothing?" Silence filled the storage unit, heavy as wet blankets. Then Nora reached into a box and pulled out a sealed envelope, thick and yellowed. She handed it to me. On the front, my mother's handwriting, Emma, for the night they come back. My throat closed. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, a letter and a small flash drive taped to the paper. The letter began with one line that made my vision blur. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't keep holding the world back by myself. I covered my mouth. Tears fell hot and sudden. Nora's voice softened, gentle but firm. Read it out loud. So I did, voice breaking, words scraping out of me like truth pulled from a wound. Emma, I'm sorry you knew me as small. I needed you too. If you ever felt embarrassed of my quiet life, that was my armor. The quieter I was, the safer you were. Grant doesn't love, he collects. And once he knows something is precious to you, he will use it. This flash drive holds everything I took from him, records, names, proof. It's the truth that can end him. But truth is dangerous when you hold it alone. So here is what you do. You don't meet him, you don't trade, you don't negotiate. You take the proof to the people I trusted. Not friends, not police, the office I write below. And Emma, if you ever wondered what it cost to raise you, this is the cost. I gave up being seen so you could become everything. I wasn't weak. I was your silent anchor. Love always, Mom, Claire. My whole body shook. Nora wiped her face with the back of her hand, angry at her own tears. She loved you so much it looked like nothing from the outside. I clutched the flash drive like it was a heartbeat, but my mind kept circling one thing. Grant wanted the ledger, he thought it was the leverage. What if we used that? A plan formed, sharp, terrifying, clear. We let him think we're bringing it, I whispered. Nora's eyes widened. Emma, we don't meet him, I said, repeating my mother's words like a spell. But we can stage it. Keep him busy, buy time to get this drive where it needs to go. Nora stared at me and something shifted in her face, like she saw Claire in my expression for the first time. Your mother used to say, Nora swallowed. When you can't stop a wave, you decide where it breaks. I nodded. Tonight, 8 p.m. by 7:45, we were back at my mother's house. The sky was darkening. Streetlights buzzed on with a faint electrical whine. The wet pavement reflected everything like a shaky mirror. Inside, the house smelled like old flowers and lemon cleaner. Nora moved with purpose now, despite the oxygen tank we'd brought in and set discreetly by the couch. She had rules, steps, a checklist that felt like muscle memory. I placed the ledger on the kitchen table, a decoy, because we'd swapped the real one into Nora's bag. The decoy was an old accounting notebook from the storage unit, similar size, similar look. Close enough in dim light for a confident man who believed he was in control. Then Nora handed me a small keychain camera, tiny, black. Your mother's, she said, it uploads. My hands shook as I clipped it under the kitchen cabinet lip aimed at the table. Are we really doing this? I whispered. Nora's mouth tightened. We're finishing what she started. At 7:58 my phone buzzed. Unknown number, lights off, back door unlocked. Don't make me repeat myself. My pulse spiked. Nora leaned close. We don't obey, we don't engage. We leave. I looked around the kitchen one last time. In the corner sat my mother's mug chipped at the rim, a dish towel with faded sunflowers, a smell of coffee that wasn't there but felt like it was. I realized something then, sharp and unbearable. All those years I thought she had no life, she'd been living one long act of love. I turned off the kitchen light, not because Grant told me to, because it was time. We slipped out the back door, locked it behind us, and crossed the yard into the shadows. Nora's car was parked a block away. We'd be gone in minutes. At exactly 8:03, a figure appeared at the side gate, tall, coat collar up. Moving like he knew the layout, my stomach clenched so hard I thought I'd vomit. Nora's hand gripped mine. "Don't look too long." But I couldn't help it. The man stepped onto the porch and paused, listening. Like he could hear the house breathing. Then he opened the back door like he had a key. I went cold all over. Nora whispered he always had one. We reached the car, slid inside, and Nora started the engine. As we pulled away, my phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't unknown number. It was an email notification from an address my mother had written in the letter, "Upload complete." Nora exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for 40 years. We drove, rain ticking on the roof, toward the office that could end Grant Hawthorne. And behind us, in that kitchen, under that tiny camera, a man would open the notebook and realize he'd been outplayed by a simple housewife. Later, much later, after statements and sealed doors and a trembling cup of coffee in a fluorescent-lit waiting room, Nora looked at me and said, "He's not untouchable anymore." I stared at my hands, still shaking, and thought about my mother at the stove, humming that lullaby, eyes always on the window. "Why didn't she tell me?" I whispered. Nora's voice was soft. "Because you deserved a childhood that didn't feel like a war." I swallowed hard. That night when I finally returned to my mother's house, it didn't feel empty. It felt inhabited by truth. I walked into the kitchen and placed my hand on the table where the ledger had been. And for the first time, I spoke to her like she could hear me. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I thought you were small." The refrigerator hummed. Rain tapped the glass. Somewhere outside, the wind moved through trees with a sigh, and in that quiet, I understood the legacy she left me. My success wasn't built only on my effort. It was built on her invisible sacrifice. On every ordinary day she endured so I could live an extraordinary life. Claire Bennett wasn't fragile, she was the silent anchor. And I promised her quietly, fiercely,